Today I want to talk about equalizers. The question is, do we need anything else except for FabFilter's Pro Q? Very good question, right? Today I want to give you my opinion, but I also want to give you a practical example. I'm going to EQ a snare drum for you and show you why and how analog EQs or emulations of analog EQs still matter. That sounds like fun, right? Here we go. So don't get me wrong, I'm using Pro Q all the time. And these days you can use any good quality oversample digital EQ and it's gonna work and it's gonna sound great. Now, there are reasons for using more classic EQs as well. And I'm not really talking about harmonics. That is one important part, obviously, because all those classic EQs introduce harmonic distortion. And if you are using an accurate plugin, the plugin will include that as well. Today, I'm going to use Softube's Pultec emulation, and this also emulates the harmonic distortion of the original Pultec hardware models. And same about Universal Audio or other brands. They put that into the plugins, which is nice. Well, that's not what I'm going to talk about, because you can introduce harmonic distortion in other ways as well. And it actually hasn't much to do with the EQing itself. What I'm talking about are the EQ curves, because many of the EQ curves of the original analog devices are very special. Just look at the low band of a Pultec EQ or the low band of a 1073 Neve EQ. You would never dial anything like that in on a FabFilter Pro Q. You just don't do that. And that's the interesting part. Because of the visual aspect of how Pro Q works, you work in a certain way, and those analog devices just work differently. And you tend to use your ears more than your eyes. And if you use analog EQs or the emulations and you get to know them and you use them on a lot of sources, you will learn that they just work perfectly for certain tasks. And in those cases, and that's the reason why I use analog EQs, it's just easier to use the original. Why should I complicate my life and try to emulate that curve with a digital modern EQ if I can just go boom, you know? So analog EQs make my life easier and can make your life easier if you know how to use them right. All right, enough talking. Let's move on with the practical part. What you are about to see is a snippet of a Snare EQ course that you can find inside my academy, Kohle Audio Kult. Because I love you so much, this course right now is $9.99. Okay? Get that course if you want to learn something about EQing snare drums. Or become a member of Kohle Audio Kult and get all our courses. There's a lot. Just check it out. Check the link below to the academy. It's a lot of fun. All right, enough advertising. Let me show you how I EQ a snare with a Pultec. Here we go. So here we are in Cubase, and these are the drum files from the Bob Marlette course. Let's just have a listen. This is just a very, very rough mix. Snare sounds pretty nice already. Let's solo the snare. Sounds like this. And I've already EQ'd it a little bit, and look at this. So I've boosted the main punch and tried to reduce some of the overtones or the ringing. That's exactly what I've shown you in the previous chapter. After that, I have a compressor. Adding 3 dB of compression. And now I'm going to put a Pultec in between the compressor and another Pro Q, which will just cut off the lows after the Pultec. I'm going to use the Pultec equalizers, and the reason for doing that is that this plugin both includes the program equalizer, the traditional Pultec for the lows and the highs, and also the mid Pultec, and in one plugin, and that's a very powerful combination. So snare solo, let me show you what you can do, because you can pretty much use every band of this EQ. And we want to start with the punch and the low end. And there are actually two bands that can be used for this. The main low end band and this peak band here. I usually set this one to 100 and then you just boost. And even the most extreme setting sounds kind of organic. Nice natural punch. And you can also use the so-called Pultec trick and boost and reduce the same frequency at the same time, because this one here actually sits a little higher. And that gives you the typical Pultec low-end bump with a reduced upper bass range. Just like that. That's a nice combination. So now we've added some punch, but we can also use this band. I usually go down to 200 Hertz and see what happens. So we hear this adds a nice punch as well, but it sits a lot higher and already introduces some like lower mid frequencies. So let's be a little more careful with this one. But feel free to use those two bands together. Let's just bypass this to see what we've done. And that really fattens the snare a lot. Beautiful. It's an extreme setting, I know, but I want to show you what you can do with a Pultec, so I'm going to use extreme settings in this example. Let's move on. Now we've got this dip band here, which is also very powerful. And you can use this one to clean up the lower mid-range of your snare. Usually I go to 500 or to 700. And you can go pretty extreme. Let's have a listen. Wow, still usable. Really cleans up the entire lower mid-range. I think I prefer 500 in this case. So if you want to get rid of that honky honk in there, this is the band that just immediately removes all of that. Let's go extreme. I promised some extreme settings. So let's do it like this. And now we move on to the presence and attack part. So we've got the main high bell band here. Remember, this is not a shelving, this is a bell band, but that actually helps us for the snare because we don't want to boost the cymbals, we want to boost the attack of the snare. I usually use it pretty broad or like all the way up, and usually something like 3, 4, 5 kilohertz works for me. If you go up here, you boost too much of, in this case, the hi-hat or the cymbals. Have a listen. We don't need too much of this, but you can see this is very, very powerful and a very organic way of adding attack to your snare. Another way of doing it is this band down here, which is a little more narrow. But you hear it, this can work too. This is quite a bit broader, but you know, you can put them both to something like 4 kilohertz and then just compare. This sounds a little more natural and also boosts the snare wires a little bit, but it also brings up the hi-hat a little bit more. But let's use this one maybe like this. One cool thing about this peak band is if you go to 1.5 kilohertz, it boosts what I call the lo-fi crack of the snare. Which can be cool as well, which is a more snary sounding way of giving the snare more attack. The only band we haven't used is this one up here. You can try to put it to 20 kilohertz to get rid of some of the cymbal bleed. Like this, without darkening the snare too much. Alright, but now it's time to bypass the plugin again to see what we've done.
And this is impressive, isn't it? It's such a beautiful high-fidelity treatment for your snare. The boxiness is removed, we've got a nice clear punch down there, and we got more attack. And we're not fooling ourselves, because this is not actually louder than before. We've also removed quite some energy down here. And this is the power of the Pultec. And I don't even know what this frequency curve looks like, and I don't need to know, but it brings me a lot closer to a final mix. Let's have a final listen.
I hope I could inspire you a little bit to reach for an analog EQ or emulation of an analog EQ a little more often in the future. Just try to understand what those different EQ bands actually do. Use an analyzer or use something like Plugin Doctor. It's really interesting to find out what your plugins are really doing. And remember, if you want to learn more about EQing snares, there's a link below, $9.99 for the Snare EQ course right now, or become a member of my academy, where there's so much more. Lots of multi-tracks, lots of courses. You can upload your own courses and get a mixed feedback review from me. And we're a great community. Just check out Kohle Audio Kult. It's a really cool place if you're into heavy music. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel. I love you all, and I see you in hell, dear motherfuckers. Greetings from LA. Bye-bye.